One of the last things people are willing to let go of is choice. Even when the idea of a central self has softened, even when control is no longer felt in the same way, choice still seems sacred. People will say things like, "I get that the self isn't what I thought, but I still make choices." That has to be real. This episode is not about taking choice away. It's about clarifying what choice actually is and what has been quietly added to it that doesn't belong there. Because when the center drops out, choice does not disappear. What disappears is the chooser. And those two things are not the same. Choice is usually imagined as a moment where a central agent stands between options and selects one. A kind of internal decider. A point inside that weighs outcomes, considers consequences, and then pushes life in a direction. That model feels intuitive, but when it's examined carefully, it doesn't hold up. Because if you look closely at how choices actually occur, you'll notice something subtle and important. By the time a choice is consciously noticed, it has already been made. Think about something simple. Reaching for a glass of water. Choosing what to say next in a conversation. Deciding which route to take home. Did a chooser appear first? Or did an action arise, followed by a story about choosing? Most of the time, the movement is already underway before the explanation arrives. The mind narrates after the fact. It says, "I chose this," but that sentence appears once the direction is already set. This is not a problem. It's just how cognition works. But when the narration is mistaken for the cause, confusion begins. The center claims ownership of choice. It says, "I decided," and that creates the sense that without this center, decisions would not occur. But decisions do not originate from ownership. They arise from conditions. Every choice is shaped by countless factors. Past experience, current mood, available information, time pressure, physical state, emotional tone, environmental cues. These factors converge. A direction forms. Action follows. And then the center says, "That was my choice." The chooser is a narrator, not an operator. When this becomes clear, a common fear appears. If there's no chooser, does that mean I have no agency? This fear comes from equating agency with authorship. But agency does not require a central author. Agency is the capacity for response. And response does not vanish when ownership dissolves. It becomes more direct. Without a chooser, choice becomes simpler. Not easier in the sense of effortlessness all the time. Simpler in the sense of fewer internal layers. There is less hesitation, less self-argument, less mental rehearsal. Not because decisions stop matching, but because they are no longer routed through identity. One of the most noticeable changes after the center loosens is the reduction of internal debate. Before, choices often feel heavy. What should I do? What's the right move? What does this say about me? What if I regret this later? These questions are not neutral. They exist to protect and shape identity. Without a center, many of these questions simply don't arise. Not because thought stops, but because thought no longer needs to defend a self. This does not result in impulsivity. That's another misunderstanding. Impulse is not the absence of a chooser. Impulse is action without sensitivity, and sensitivity remains fully intact. In fact, it often sharpens, because attention is no longer split between the situation and the self. Consider decision-making at work. With a center, decisions are filtered through performance, reputation, future narratives, self-evaluation. Without a center, decisions are filtered through practicality, context. What needs to happen next? The outcome is often more effective, not because someone is trying harder, but because less is interfering. This also changes how mistakes are experienced. When a choice leads to an outcome that doesn't work, the center reacts. It says, "I chose wrong. This reflects on me. I should have known." Without a center, the response is different. There's information here. This didn't work. Adjustment is needed. Learning still happens. Correction still happens. But without the added weight of self-judgment. Another fear appears here. If there's no chooser, am I just on autopilot? This question misunderstands what autopilot actually is. Autopilot is unconscious repetition. It's behavior driven by habit without awareness. The absence of a chooser does not remove awareness. It removes narration. Awareness remains present, often more present. When the center is gone, awareness is no longer occupied with self-monitoring. It is available for the situation itself. This makes choices feel quieter, but not blind. They feel obvious, not because they are always easy, but because there is less internal noise competing for attention. Choice without a chooser also changes how preference works. With a center, preference becomes personal. I like this. I don't like that. This matters to me. Without a center, preference still exists, but it is not owned. There is liking. There is disliking. There is movement toward and away, but without the additional layer of identity. This allows flexibility. Preferences can change without threat. There is no self to protect. This is especially noticeable in long-term decisions. Career shifts, relationship changes, lifestyle adjustments. With a center, these decisions feel monumental. They define a story. They lock an identity. Without a center, they are still significant, but they are not defining. They are responses to changing conditions. Life adjusting itself. A subtle but important point here. Choice without a chooser does not mean inevitability. It does not mean everything is fixed or predetermined. It means that choices arise from conditions rather than from a central controller. Conditions change, so do choices. There is flexibility, not fatalism. This also changes how regret is experienced. With a center, regret is personal. I made the wrong choice. I failed. I ruined something. Without a center, regret loses its narrative grip. There may still be sadness. There may still be disappointment, but the looping self-attack fades. The past becomes information, not a verdict. Another place this becomes clear is in conversation. Words come out before they are chosen. You don't select sentences word by word. Speech happens, and afterward, the center may approve or disapprove. When the center is absent, speech becomes more fluid. Listening deepens. Responses are less calculated, not reckless. Responsive. This does not mean everything said is perfect. It means there is less delay between contact and response. Less internal editing, more authenticity, without trying to be authentic. At this point, some people worry about morality again. If there's no chooser, how do I choose the right thing? This assumes morality comes from conscious selection. But moral behavior arises from sensitivity, not selection. When harm is perceived, response arises. When care is needed, care appears. This does not require a chooser. It requires contact. In fact, moral failure often happens when the center intervenes. When protecting identity becomes more important than responding to reality. Without a chooser, there is less incentive to justify harmful behavior. There is no self-image to protect. A common trap at this stage is trying to become a non-chooser. People attempt to watch choices happen, to avoid preference, to stay neutral. This recreates a center in a subtler form. Another observer, another manager. Choice does not require supervision. It requires allowance. The simplest orientation is this. Let choices happen the way breathing happens. Not forced, not resisted, not claimed. Breathing does not need a breather. Choice does not need a chooser. If this feels unsettling at first, that's normal. The center has been trained to believe it is essential. Letting go of that belief can feel like stepping into groundlessness. But notice something. Life keeps moving. Decisions keep happening. Responsibility remains. Care remains. Intelligence remains. What is missing is not capacity. What is missing is commentary. This is not a loss. It is a simplification. Choice becomes an event, not a possession. Movement happens. Adjustment follows. Life continues. In the next episode, we'll look at effort. Not effort as struggle. Not effort as discipline. But how effort functions when there is no one pushing. Because this is another place where people expect collapse. And once again, collapse does not occur.